New tonight, Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell is co-leading a coalition of 25 states suing the U.S. Postal Service over a new rule they say illegally puts the agency in charge of mail-in voting. Now, the rule stems from a March executive order by President Trump. He directed the USPS to compile names of eligible voters and only deliver ballots to people on that list using envelopes that meet new postal design standards. AG Campbell calls the executive order unconstitutional, saying it strips states of power to run elections. She also argues it disenfranchises millions, including more than 1 million Bay Staters who voted by mail in 2024. The lawsuit asks a federal court to block the rule before this year's general election while the case plays out.